The steak knife clattered against the porcelain plate with a sharp ring that registered at exactly 70 decibels. My father leaned across the mahogany dining table, his face flushed a deep crimson, while the vein in his forehead pulsed at roughly 90 beats per minute. He had just discovered the news. He found the digital press release confirming the final acquisition of my predictive routing network. The total corporate valuation stood at $170 million, finalized at precisely 9:02 a.m. and deposited directly into a blind corporate trust. He stared at me with pure venom before calling me a selfish parasite. He demanded to know why the family trust was not listed as a primary shareholder. He calculated his imagined cut in real time, expecting at least $80 million. He truly felt entitled to my intellectual property simply because he bought my first laptop. I did not scream, nor did I defend myself. I simply watched his psychological baseline fracture. I am 34 years old. My name is Julian, and I am a systems architect based in Seattle. I build scalable redundancy protocols for enterprise servers. I analyze structural weaknesses for a living. Sitting there, I was looking at the biggest structural weakness of my entire life. My father slammed his fist onto the table, making the water glasses vibrate. He declared that I was no longer his son, officially disowning me in front of the entire crowded restaurant. He expected me to beg for his approval or offer a multi-million-dollar wire transfer to buy back his love. I reached for my water glass and took a slow sip. I calculated the precise cost of the dinner, which would come to $412.80. I decided right then to let him pay for it. I stood up from the table and adjusted my jacket. Where were you when you realized your own blood viewed you as a financial asset? Drop your city and the time of day in the comments below. I walked out of the restaurant without a backward glance into the 42-degree night air. My phone began to vibrate in my pocket. It was my mother. The gaslighting protocol was officially initiating. She would play the peacemaker, demand I apologize, and insist I write a check to smooth things over. The total withdrawal had now officially begun for me. My family operates like a legacy malware program running silently in the background. They drain vital system resources while remaining completely invisible to the casual observer. For 12 years, I was the primary server handling their constant financial overflow requests. It started when I secured my first junior developer role at 22. My mother required exactly $3,450 to cover a medical bill. I transferred the funds without a single question or moment of hesitation. 6 months later, my older brother defaulted on his luxury auto loan. He demanded a rapid bridge loan of $7,800. He claimed it was a temporary and isolated personal liquidity issue. He lied entirely, and the familial financial bleeding simply continued to rapidly escalate. They utilized a psychological framework built entirely on engineered and weaponized guilt. Every time I hit a career milestone, their baseline standard of living inexplicably rose. When I was promoted to senior architect, my father demanded a massive financial contribution. He required exactly $75,000 to renovate his rural hunting cabin. I politely declined to manually fund the deeply unnecessary cabin construction project. The subsequent campaign of engineered emotional isolation lasted for precisely 47 days. They uninvited me from Thanksgiving and muted my number in the family group chat. They were actively testing my maximum emotional and psychological load-bearing capacity. They needed to see how much silence I could endure before I finally yielded. I eventually capitulated and wired them $32,000 to restore familial connectivity. That was my fundamental and lingering error in personal operational security. By subsidizing their aggressive entitlement, I trained them to view my labor as passive income. I became a decentralized financial node for their continuous and unchecked lifestyle creep. I tracked every single transaction in a heavily encrypted and redundant local ledger. Over the last decade, their total extractions equaled $314,900. They never asked about the grueling night hours I spent writing complex routing algorithms. They never understood the strict technical complexity of maintaining absolute enterprise server uptime. I was just an automated and highly reliable utility provider to them. If the power stays on, nobody ever once thanks the municipal power company. But if the grid fails, the customer demands immediate and aggressive financial compensation. The recent dinner at the steakhouse was the final critical system diagnostic alert. My family assumed their digital lives operated on sheer magic. They never questioned how my brother's custom automotive parts business maintained perfect online visibility. They never wondered who renewed the SSL certificates or managed the DNS routing for his e-commerce platform. An SSL certificate is the digital passport that keeps a website secure from malicious hackers. I hosted his entire digital infrastructure on my personal enterprise servers. It cost me exactly $284.15 every single month. I maintained the exclusive root administrator privileges. I handled the highly complex back-end security patches while he posted photos of his expensive cars. My parents were equally dependent on my unseen technical labor. I managed the centralized cloud storage network for their boutique real estate brokerage. They accumulated exactly 4.7 terabytes of uncompressed client data over 9 years. I built a highly secure, redundant backup protocol for their entire operation. This system ensured their sensitive financial documents never suffered catastrophic data loss. I paid the monthly enterprise licensing fees out of my own pocket. It was an automated recurring charge of $119. They never once offered to reimburse me for the basic operating costs. They took this invisible administrative architecture completely for granted. They genuinely believed the digital world was just a free utility. My mother frequently called me to fix her synchronized email accounts. She would demand immediate remote desktop support at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I always fixed the synchronization errors with absolute clinical efficiency. I never reminded them that my hourly corporate consulting rate was $450. I simply resolved their localized network failures, updated their firewalls, and quietly logged out. They did not realize that I still held the master encryption keys to their entire digital existence. I controlled the domain registrars for every single family business entity, paying the annual registration fees myself. I owned the primary authentication email address for their critical cloud infrastructure. The domain registrar is the ultimate legal owner of a website address. My brother's lucrative digital storefront and my parents' massive client databases existed entirely by my grace. I was the silent administrator holding the ultimate master override codes. When my father disowned me at that steakhouse, he made a severe tactical error. He fundamentally misunderstood who actually owned and operated the physical servers powering his entire life. I returned to my apartment at exactly 10:14 p.m. I brewed a single cup of dark roast coffee and sat at my primary workstation. The wide monitors illuminated the dark room with a harsh blue glow. It was time to initiate a complete and total infrastructural decoupling. I opened my Central Identity Access Management console. This highly secure system acts as the master digital keyring for every single authorized user. I located the legacy family cluster within the Active Directory. I did not feel angry or vindictive as I highlighted their specific user nodes. I felt absolute administrative clarity. I executed the first revocation command at precisely 10:22 p.m. I targeted my brother's e-commerce platform first. I navigated to his primary domain registrar account. I changed the authoritative name servers to a null root. A null root is essentially a digital black hole that swallows all incoming web traffic. Any customer attempting to buy his luxury automotive parts would now receive a fatal connection error. Next, I revoked the active API tokens bridging his storefront to his payment processor. I effectively severed his direct ability to process any credit card transactions. I then moved on to my parents and their real estate brokerage. I accessed the master administration panel for their cloud storage network. I did not delete a single file or destroy their client data. I simply executed a complete ownership transfer of the digital encryption keys. I locked the primary user accounts and triggered a forced global logout across all active devices. I terminated the automated recurring payment of $119 for their premium tier hosting. I downgraded their enterprise status to a free basic user tier. This immediate downgrade restricted their total storage capacity to 5 gigabytes. They possessed exactly 4.7 terabytes of critical real estate contracts. The system instantly froze all active access to prevent further data upload. I secured the remaining corporate infrastructure with a biometric hardware key. I systematically purged their mobile numbers from the multi-factor authentication database. I scrubbed my own credit card information from 8 different recurring utility accounts. I cancelled the premium software licenses for my mother's digital accounting platform. I severed the automated backup cron jobs. A cron job is just a scheduled script that runs maintenance tasks automatically. I spent exactly 2 hours and 14 minutes completely erasing my structural presence. I untangled 12 years of deep digital codependency without raising a single alarm. I removed my formal name from the registered administration records. I permanently revoked all of their emergency restoration privileges. My resting pulse never exceeded 68 beats per minute during the entire digital extraction process. The family network was now completely isolated and flying blind. They would not notice the massive systemic failure until the early morning business hours. I finally closed my active command terminal and slowly powered down my 3 secondary high-resolution monitors. I drank the remaining ounces of my cold coffee. I went straight to sleep in total silence. My phone began to vibrate at precisely 7:14 a.m. The caller ID displayed my older brother's name. I let the call route directly to my secure voicemail server. 2 minutes later, my network monitoring dashboard lit up. The automated logs showed his IP address refreshing his storefront rapidly. He was encountering a standard 503 service unavailable error. A 503 error means the server is physically running but refusing to process the incoming request. He refreshed the dead page 48 times in 3 minutes. At 7:22 a.m., a text message arrived. He demanded I fix his website immediately. He claimed he was losing a $1,200 order for a custom exhaust manifold. My mother called exactly 18 minutes later. Her tone shifted from artificial peacekeeper to frantic business owner. She attempted to access her premium cloud storage drive. The system correctly identified her as a basic tier user. It locked her out of 4.7 terabytes of pending real estate contracts. Her entire digital workspace was frozen in a strict read-only mode. She sent a voice memo at 7:45 a.m. Her voice trembled with engineered panic. She stated that she had a closing at noon for a $950,000 property. She claimed my childish tantrum was jeopardizing her $28,000 commission. I poured a glass of ice water and reviewed the escalating communication logs. My father took over the negotiation tactics by 8:30 a.m. He abandoned the concept of disowning me entirely. He sent a massive block of text containing extreme legal threats. He claimed he would sue me for intentional corporate sabotage and breach of fiduciary duty. A fiduciary duty implies a legal obligation to act in another party's financial interest. I had never signed a single contract or service-level agreement with any of them. I was simply a ghost in their machine. His threats were legally baseless and structurally unsound. By 9:00 a.m., the strategy pivoted back to aggressive emotional manipulation. My brother sent a picture of his newborn daughter. He asked how I could actively steal food from my own niece. My mother followed up with a detailed message about her rising blood pressure. She claimed her systolic reading was currently at 160. She demanded I restore server access to save her physical health. They expected the sudden pressure to break my operational resolve. They believed I would cave to the overwhelming guilt and quietly restore their digital infrastructure. I did not reply to a single message or return any of the 14 missed calls. I simply exported the entire communication thread into an encrypted PDF file. I categorized the threats and the emotional manipulation into separate digital folders. I was compiling the raw data for my final administrative action. I poured another glass of ice water and checked my watch. It was exactly 10 in the morning. The escalation phase was proceeding perfectly according to my predictive behavioral models. I embraced the quiet solitude without any lingering hesitation. I opened my encrypted terminal interface at 10:15 in the morning. I established a secure shell connection to my primary database. A secure shell connection is a secure network protocol for operating services. I needed to compile a complete and undeniable audit trail. I ran a complex relational query against 12 years of financial logs. The script pulled every single transaction I ever routed to my family. It parsed the metadata of my personal banking interface. The final compilation took exactly 4.2 seconds to render. The total gross extraction was $314,000 exactly. I exported this raw data into a sanitized spreadsheet file. I did not stop at simply documenting the long financial drain. My family operated their businesses entirely through my personal hardware. I had full administrative visibility into their server usage logs. I queried the access logs for my mother's real estate cloud drive. I discovered 38 instances of unauthorized third-party file sharing. She had transmitted unencrypted client financial records to unsecured personal email addresses. This was a massive violation of standard state data compliance regulations. If the housing authority knew, her broker license would be instantly revoked. Next, I ran a deep packet inspection on my brother's e-commerce traffic. A deep packet inspection analyzes the actual data sent over a network. I isolated the shipping origin codes for his luxury automotive parts. He claimed he fabricated the custom exhaust manifolds locally in his shop. The routing data proved he dropshipped 80% of his inventory. Dropshipping means he never actually touched or built the products he sold. He purchased parts from an overseas wholesaler for $22 each. He was charging a premium markup of $400 per unit. I compiled these raw shipping manifests and the original supplier invoices. I merged the financial ledgers, the compliance violations, and the dropshipping proofs. I compiled them into a single, immutable, cryptographic ledger. An immutable ledger is a digital record that can never be altered. I applied a strict hash function to the final data archive. A hash function generates a unique digital fingerprint for a specific file. If anyone attempted to alter a single comma, the fingerprint would shatter. I uploaded the secure archive to an independent, decentralized server cluster. It was hosted across 3 entirely different geographical availability zones. This ensured the data could never be taken offline or manually deleted. My family spent the morning demanding control over my hardware. They failed to realize I was legally auditing their professional existence. I now possessed the absolute mathematical proof of their daily fraud. I set an automated trigger for the final release of these documents. The digital trap was now fully armed and locked into place. I simply had to wait for them to force a physical confrontation. I poured myself another cup of dark roast coffee. The bitter taste matched the precise administrative execution perfectly. They mistakenly thought they could simply yell until I fixed their shattered digital lives. At exactly 6:15 p.m., the aggressive bombardment of text messages suddenly stopped. A single message arrived from my mother containing a carefully crafted apology. She claimed my father was simply stressed about his cholesterol levels. She suggested we meet in the lobby of my apartment building for a neutral conversation. She promised they just wanted to understand my perspective and heal the familial rift. It was a classic social engineering tactic designed to bypass my defensive perimeter. Social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people into performing specific actions. They needed physical proximity to enforce immediate compliance. I agreed to meet her at 7:00 p.m. near the concierge desk. I descended to the ground floor lobby wearing my standard grey wool coat. I immediately spotted the tactical deception. My mother was not alone. My father and my brother flanked her on the leather waiting sofa. They had formed a unified physical front to maximize psychological pressure. I stopped exactly 8 feet away from them. I maintained a neutral posture and kept my empty hands entirely visible. My father stood up and attempted to project authoritative dominance. He lowered his voice to a forced, diplomatic register. He offered me a superficial apology for his erratic behavior at the steakhouse. He then immediately pivoted to the core operational objective. He handed me a printed legal document. It was a poorly drafted memorandum of understanding demanding immediate server restoration. A memorandum of understanding is a non-binding agreement outlining a framework of cooperation. He claimed that if I signed it, we could return to being a happy family. My brother stepped forward and crossed his arms over his chest. He tried to play the specific role of the pragmatic negotiator. He offered to pay me a retroactive consulting fee of $1,000. It was an insulting fraction of his actual accrued digital debt. He promised he would secure his own web hosting by the fiscal quarter. He lied with the smooth, practiced ease of a career automotive salesman. My mother began to cry, producing authentic tears on absolute command. She said she could not process her pending real estate closing without her drive. She begged me to type in the administrative password right then and there. They believed this physical ambush would overwhelm my logical processing centers. They expected me to capitulate under the sheer weight of public familial guilt. I looked at the crumpled memorandum in my father's visibly shaking hand. I calculated the exact mathematical probability of their future compliance. The predictive algorithm guaranteed a 0% chance of actual systemic change. I did not raise my voice or argue the details of their absurd offer. I folded the piece of paper twice and placed it in my pocket. I looked my father directly in the eyes. I told him we would discuss the final terms tomorrow at his office. He demanded I fix the servers tonight to save his infrastructure. I turned and walked to the elevators in absolute silence. I arrived at the real estate brokerage at precisely 9:00 a.m. The office was bustling with 7 junior agents and 3 administrative assistants. My father waited in the glass-walled conference room at the center. My mother and brother sat rigidly at the polished oak table. They smiled, assuming I was there to restore their digital infrastructure. I walked in and immediately locked the heavy glass door behind me. I did not sit down or acknowledge their artificial morning greetings. I retrieved a black hardware token from my jacket pocket. I plugged it directly into the primary conference room projector system. The wall screen illuminated with a harsh white glare. I opened the secure archive I compiled the previous morning. I projected the master financial ledger for the entire room to see. The grand total of $314,900 pulsed on screen. Have you ever watched a lie collapse in real time? Drop the exact moment their mask slipped in the comments below. My father demanded to know what this meaningless spreadsheet was supposed to be. I told him it was the exact cost of my structural loyalty. I switched the display to my mother's cloud storage access logs. The screen populated with 38 distinct state data compliance violations. A compliance violation means breaking the strict laws governing client privacy. I pointed out the unencrypted financial records sent to unsecured addresses. I explained that the State Housing Authority would instantly revoke her broker license. Her forced smile vanished, replaced by an absolute, terrifying pale silence. Next, I opened the deep packet inspection logs for my brother's business. I projected the overseas shipping manifests next to his luxury retail prices. I showed the $22 unit cost beside his $400 markup. I highlighted the definitive proof of his continuous dropshipping retail fraud. He stood up and knocked his chair backward onto the carpet. He yelled that I was destroying his hardened professional reputation. I corrected him with a completely flat and steady vocal tone. I stated that his reputation was simply a fabricated digital illusion. I simply provided the raw data to the correct local directories. The junior agents outside completely stopped working. They were staring at the massive projection of the dropshipping invoices. My father finally understood the absolute severity of the administrative trap. He ordered me to delete the files and hand over the hardware token. He threatened to call the police and report a malicious cyber attack. I informed him that a cyber attack involves unauthorized external penetration. External penetration is when a hacker breaks in from the outside. I was the registered network administrator executing a routine data audit. I owned the physical servers, the domain names, and the encryption keys. I unplugged my hardware token and placed it in my pocket. The projection screen defaulted back to a blank blue signal immediately. The public execution of their fabricated reality took exactly 4 minutes. I unlocked the heavy glass door and walked away. The fallout occurred with the rapid predictability of a cascading system failure. A cascading failure is when one crashed component brings down the entire network. Within exactly 2 days, the State Housing Authority received the automated compliance logs. They initiated an immediate administrative freeze on my mother's real estate brokerage. Her license was suspended pending a formal state investigation. The $950,000 closing failed to execute on time. The sellers terminated the contract and filed a massive civil grievance. Her $28,000 commission simply evaporated into thin air. My brother's digital storefront remained entirely inaccessible to the public internet. His organic search engine ranking plummeted from page 1 to absolute 0. Customers who purchased the $400 custom exhaust manifolds demanded immediate refunds. They found the overseas shipping manifests I forwarded to his largest automotive forums. The community blacklisted his entire brand within 3 full days. He was left with $12,000 in chargeback fees from his payment processor. A chargeback is a forced refund initiated directly by a credit card company. He could not access his frozen merchant account to dispute a single claim. My father attempted to secure an emergency line of commercial credit. He needed exactly $150,000 to float the collapsing brokerage. The central bank underwriter denied his application in exactly 14 minutes. His corporate credit was completely broken without my continuous decentralized financial injections. He called me on a blocked number at 4:12 p.m. on Thursday. He did not threaten lawsuits or demand the master encryption passwords. He simply asked how he was supposed to pay his commercial lease. I informed him that a commercial lease is a legally binding financial contract. I suggested he liquidate the rural hunting cabin to cover his immediate liabilities. I hung up the phone and permanently blacklisted the incoming routing number. The legacy malware was finally purged from my central operating system. Their entire lifestyle was a fragile digital house built on my silent labor. When I removed the foundational servers, gravity simply did the rest. The collapse required absolutely no external input or malicious emotional energy. It was a purely mathematical correction of 12 years of stolen resources. I closed the incident report and archived the final server logs. The hardware system was finally stable. I deleted the backup configuration files. My professional infrastructure was perfectly secure. I am currently sitting inside a premium terminal at the international airport. My direct flight to Tokyo departs at precisely 11:45 in the morning. I purchased the ticket for $6,240 using my secure corporate trust account. I am relocating my primary enterprise servers to a maximum security data center in Japan. This specific data center guarantees 99% absolute uptime. It features fully redundant power subsystems and strict biometric security protocols. An isolated system means it is physically disconnected from any unsecured public internet network. My life is now operating on a strict zero-trust architecture. Zero trust means every single access request must be mathematically verified before final approval. I do not feel a lingering sense of tragic loss or dramatic familial grief. I simply feel the absolute frictionless speed of a perfectly optimized network. The $314,000 deficit is permanently written off as a sunk cost. A sunk cost is a historical expense that can never be recovered. My cognitive processing power is no longer drained by constant emotional background noise. I am finally running at maximum structural efficiency without any legacy malware holding me back from my true potential. What corrupted system in your own life desperately needs a hard physical reset? Drop your exact answer in the comments section below. I close my laptop and place it carefully inside my waterproof travel case. The boarding sequence initiates with a soft automated chime echoing through the wide terminal. I stand up and walk toward the final departure gate in total absolute silence. I leave the wreckage of their fabricated digital lives burning 3,000 miles completely behind me. My new operational reality is peaceful, perfectly calculated, and entirely mine.